This is your corner on Fifth. A very good morning to you, Lydia. How are you? We haven't had you on the air for a while. Talk to us very quickly what you are about and busy with, trying to finish. What are you doing?
Yeah, morning. Yeah, one of the big tabs. I always had a friend who said their brain is like, the opening of the search engine with all these tabs. So my big tab that is constantly open is I'm busy with a course, occupational development and education training. So I can facilitate, moderate, and assess to the highest level of my qualification, my degree. Um, so that's what I'm busy with. Still kind of, not kind of, it is the teaching, but now it's focused more so on adult learners. That's our terms that we're using. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. What are we now? Almost November. I started in April this year, so it's been quite a ride.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I appreciate you carving out time out of that busy schedule of running your home and looking after your daughter and taking care of a husband and everything else in between. This morning we are going to look at number 6 in our discussion that we've been having. Uh, it's been an interesting one because we talked about being able to speak well, and now we want to look at fluency in the whole area of our discussions. When we think of discussions, what are we thinking of? We're thinking basically of um, fluency in processing information, right? Number 6, fluency in processing information in a non-reactive kind of way. Well, let's first of all just unpack this statement. When you talk about fluency, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, fluency for me, as a language background teacher, um, the ability to do something well, to speak well, specifically in terms of English, having fluency in a language, being able to navigate your space, being able to communicate reasonably well in that language, understanding meaning. Yeah,
Right. So
kind
going
of where I'm coming
with
from.
being able to flow inside of a space versus sputtering and jerking and choking and all that goes with non-fluency, right? So fluency in processing information. Why is it important to learn to process information? Why process information? Isn't information just information?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, data is around, noise is around, and how you get information from that, I guess. And processing is how it comes at you and how you take that information and assimilate it and think it through. I feel that's what processing is. We don't just think of computers processing something. As human beings, you're taking something in and thinking it through. That's what I'm associating with processing
Right. So
information.
it's how that info comes at you and how you go at it. Because it really is a two-way street. It comes at you encoded in a specific way, and now you need to decode that information. And those processes are very, very important. When we think of what we bring to information, we bring our own perspectives, don't we? Uh, to that info, because we read it from a vantage point that could be quite different than the way the person who is presenting the information views, you know, that specific data set. And then non-reactive. How does that strike you? What does that mean? A non-reactive way.
Yeah, I love that because being a young mom, having to constantly be responding to the 2-year-old who's doing things all the time and can catch you by surprise, trying to not react to something because that can cause a lot more harm than good. So non-reactive is the opposite, all right? Being able to be intentional. I feel like it can prevent a lot of things when you're non-reactionary. Yeah, responding rather than just knee-jerk reaction. Yeah.
But even a non-reactionary response is a non-reactionary response. It's still a response, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
how to learn to put on the brakes, when to put on the brakes, how intensely do you apply the brake? I mean, think of when you brake, apply the brake in your car. Sometimes you have to do it a lot faster with greater force. Other times, just slowly easing your foot on that pedal, right? So there's a mouthful here. Fluency in processing information in a non-reactive way. Now, we have tried to decompose the statement somewhat, just to break it apart. Fluency, processing, information, non-reactive. Now, let's look at this in the context of stages of growth. How, on what basis then could we figure out where a person is at in relation to this statement?
Yeah, I think this is, coming from being a teacher and even into the new skill set that I'm trying to acquire now, you can determine someone's, to a certain degree, where they're at in terms of a growth stage based on their ability to, like you said earlier, move into a space, how well they move into that space, and the manner in which they respond to information while they're in that space. So I think that statement already can tell you if there is a topic that's been spoken about and you get a knee-jerk reaction, you know, have they processed what's going on in their own bodies, in the information that they're getting, and how well can they communicate that? All of that is telling me where they're at. Are they ready to engage? Are they not ready to engage? What's going on right now in this moment? What's the environment situation? I mean, it's, even being as a facilitator, they like to say now, you're not teaching someone and just giving them information. You are allowing for an environment of space where somebody feels like they're learning. So how someone, responds to information you're giving or they're encountering is going to tell you a lot.
Well, other than that, other than it telling us a lot, which has to do with this statement, fluency in processing information in a non-reactive way, where do you think we are to learn the skill of fluency, the skill of being able to flow, first of all? Where do you think that starts?
Well, it starts at home. That's what you are born into, the family environment that you have been born into, and that's set up at home. What's been modeled to you, and not only modeled. If I think of Isla, we had an incident yesterday. It was a disciplinary situation, an opportunity, let's say, where she wanted to not do what was presented before her, and so she needed to be removed so that the tantrum could then, she could move through that emotion and then we can engage afterwards. So I think there's so much just in that setting of at home. Do you have a safe space that's been created for you to think through, how do I respond, how do I react, what am I learning about what happens when I do something, when somebody else does something? I think there's so much we take for granted in our primary space, in our first encounter space at home with family. Yeah.
I like that idea of first encounter space. First encounter space is basically domestic, right? Whatever, wherever that domestic space is found, could be in a hut, could be in a hovel, right? Some kind of shelter, but still, but don't you think, or do you think that what a child observes in a home has or doesn't have an impact on him or her in terms of fluency? How do you think fluency is curtailed depending on what that person sees in that domestic space?
I think I'm just going to use myself as an example in terms of fluency and my ability to respond and receive and process. I do think it's to a large extent how much opportunity was provided in that first encounter space, in that safe space. It can be curtailed when you aren't given that safety, right? They say your brain actually doesn't receive information when it's in a survival mode, when it's highly stressed. So I think that's a lot to say about developing fluency. If you are constantly in a space where you're endangered, where you're shut down, where you don't have a voice, where you can't share an experience, make mistakes, that's all part of learning, growth, and really number six, about finding the space of being able to move in the space and process information. So yeah.
Wow, that's really something I hadn't necessarily thought about so specifically. That fluency is developed in a space, or non-fluency is also develops in a side of a space, not a vacuum, but a space where things are happening. If it's all negative, it is pretty hard to develop a flow because the flow is constantly curtailed by obstacles and rocks and blockages and bumps and twists and turns, right? While that may be part of it, if there's not freedom to navigate, freedom to flow, if you always tell a child, sit down, shut up, don't talk, be quiet, finger on the mouth, sit still, stop moving. I mean, goodness me.
Yeah.
We grew up in a day where in spaces, oh my goodness, right inside of sacred spaces, whether it was the faith community or outside of it, boy, you had to sit still. And kids crawl under pews. Kids crawl under chairs. And boy, you just feel a smack against your head. Or somebody will be pulling your ear. And that's kind of the way we were, you know. I don't even want to use the word nurture, but yeah, that was called nurture. It was the pulling of the ear. And you learn very quickly, oh, yes, no flow here. Ek is flow, yeah. There's no flow. So fluency in processing information. I mean, there is so much here. So I need to learn that, start to learn that in the domestic space. That's where I learn that, isn't it? Learn to flex, learn to go with the flow, learn to move with the flow versus constantly being curtailed. Because the way information comes at us today, Lids, I mean, it is absolutely frightening. I've got access to the world's info on Dr. Google and Pastor AI, right? And scientist Gemini. And I mean, I don't need anything else. I just need to, and yet I need a fluency to be able to navigate. Is that computer, is that digital gadget going to teach me fluency? I don't think so. But fluency happens in the context of relationships. So let's talk for the time that we have into fluency in the context of relationships. That's a big one, isn't it? What are your thoughts on that? Why can't we develop fluency outside of relationships?
Because we're constantly confronted by it. I don't think it's I'm just thinking about the scenario that you're sharing now and how different you created our space that led Levi and I to fluency, and just thinking about your space was very different to our space that was created. And yet there's a degree that you've come into in terms of fluency and processing that information that you've gotten to. So in terms of relationships, what am I saying? I'm saying relationships are so crucial. You can see how they can impact and influence and help guide in a positive way fluency. Can I learn that outside of a relationship? And that's also not, even as I'm talking, I'm realizing I'm talking about relationship between human beings, relationship. But you have different kinds of relationships. You have your dynamic and connection to nature,
Yes.
right? Your environment space, your learning space, your own relationship, about what's going on internally, physiologically, intellectually. So then, to answer your question, as I think about that in the dynamic of relationship, can fluency happen outside of relationship? I don't think so, because we're in relation to everything. So that's
Right.
where I'm learning to be fluent, right?
So you learn fluency in relations to
Mm,
things and people. But
mm,
in a first hand way, a first encounter kind of way, it's people. That child encounters, other than the doctor or the midwife that delivers the baby, or even an unskilled hand that delivers the child, the first encounter is generally the mother. Mother holding that
yeah.
child close to her breast, right?
Mm.
Sure, it's a relational thing. That's why
I just want to, sorry, Karen.
relations come before relata. Relata is the things of that relate, but
Mm,
relations, you're born into relations, right? And then things come into that orbit, and out of relations and relata, the encounter between those two comes relationship, right? And I'm wondering why could the reason be that we're so poor at relating to nature and climate issues and geographic issues and the like, because we haven't learned the basic thing about just how to relate around the simplest thing, other people,
mm.
right?
Can what I wanted to say, and I agree with you. It's amazing. Again, timing. I came across something, and I shared this with Carl this morning. There's a book called The Garden and the Carpenter. I haven't read it. It just caught my attention, and they kind of give you this brief synopsis. So the encouragement was in terms of relationship and with your child, particularly in their younger years, the 0 to 3, 0 to 5. They're saying this anxiety around parenting these young children is because we think we must have these answers, and create intentional spaces all the time for learning. Like you've got to be this intentional being, and kind of over, and it creates this whole cycle. And then the one comment was, and yet what is needed at its simplistic level is for you to be present, to be
For you
engaging
just
with the child, to be there. And I thought that it can't be. It seems so simple. But I said to Carl, the one thing that you want to do is the one thing that, why do I feel guilty of doing? And so then I end up doing more than I actually need to do,
all
or
kinds of
adding
stuff.
in
Yeah,
and so it,
substitutes. Yeah,
yes. And so even just hearing what you're saying in terms of this, there are relations, and that importance of shifting and creating this dynamic of relationship. Are we not called to first, I'm thinking as a mother, have a relationship which needs to be developed, which needs to grow, which is all part of that learning with them, and they continue to grow in terms of fluency.
yeah.
So, you know, sure.
I think relationships would be your triad. It's first relations, then relata, the things to which you relate,
Mm,
and then relationship rises out of that. What happens between those two things is relationship. But you need to have the freedom to be, right? Listen to how I'm
yeah.
saying that, be. The freedom to be me versus the freedom even of being present. I just need to be free to be me. And when that child senses that, or that person senses that, I have a freedom here just to be, it's quite okay. I exist in this space. I am seen in this space. Versus I'm an unseen entity. Sit down. Shut up. Don't move. Finger on the lip. And there we go. The 20 things that they mustn't do. And we kill it right there, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, when last have you told Isla to sit still? She either be waving her feet or picking up something, exactly what you say she's going to violate.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand that. And if the environment is so negative, fluency goes out the window, processing goes out of the window because the focus is on, boy, yeah, I just need to learn to survive. I can't even be. Don't even talk about be me. Just be. The fact that I'm here means I'm in the way. Well, how can I even be me when I'm in the way? I
Mm,
first need to be, then be me, in the same breath, and then be able to relate from out of the context of who I am to who you are, and then to who we are together in relationship. There you've got a trinity right there, right? I haven't thought of it that way, but it is uh, relations. You're born into relations around relata, and relationship is what rises out of those two things. So there's wonderful food for discussion here, but I think all we are doing in these episodes is just highlighting uh, how that we can tell if we are astute. We can tell where somebody is or isn't based on the way the fluency they have in processing information in a non-reactive way. Um, so, Lydia, I'd love for us to continue. In our next episode, we're going to look at number 7, and we aren't being exhaustive here. We're just touching on these fractal trajectories, these paths of flight that help us assess a growth stage, give us some idea where the person's at. So, in the next episode, we are going to look at conflict resolution, which is such a huge area, but so crucial to at least initiate the discussion in terms of our thinking. So, we've gone over time already, but that's fine. Um, in our next episode, it will be number 7. So, Lydia, thank you for your time. And we'll do another number the next time we get together.
Perfect.
Thanks, Liz. Goodbye for
Sure.
now. Sure.
Sure.
This is your corner on Fifth.